have 6:31.
Oh, okay. Well, my didn't talk to the internet the way it was supposed
Okay.
to. Oh, on my phone, but if we're good, yes.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order, the meeting of BAWSCA Board of Directors, September 18th, 2005. I have time 6:32. First item is roll call.
Director Andrews. Director Bro.
Here for Brisbane and GVMID.
And Director Bro again. Director Chambers.
Present.
Director Cohen. Director Duncan.
Present.
Director Hamilton. Director Hardy.
Present. Oh, present.
Director Jordan.
Present in Marissa Hills.
Director Kiesel.
Here.
Director Director Lincoln. Director Milano. Director Mellinger. Director Mickelson. Director Montano. Director Nash.
Here.
Director Piccolotti. Director Pierce.
Here.
Director Ragsdale.
Here.
Director Snyder. Director Showalter.
Here.
Director Stevenson. Director Greer, or Director Stone.
Here.
I should say. Director Vella.
Present.
Director Weed. Here. And Director Zichterman.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Should we stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Oh, moving around. Yeah. Welcome back, and thank you, Burlingame, for providing us our regular meeting space. Tonight, we are missing our CEO, however. Yesterday, Mr. Schmegel had a planned medical procedure at Sanford and is on the mend and recovering well. He does expect a full recovery. Meanwhile, we're in the capable hands of Tom Francis. Tonight, we'll have an abbreviated closed session number 1, or discussion of our CEO's evaluation. Since the CEO cannot join us, we plan to have a more dynamic and interactive discussion with him at a closed session in our November meeting. For this meeting, we have 2 directors attending remotely, one in Persimmon Hills, or South Bay, and one in Amsterdam, Netherlands. Accordingly, use your best microphone manners, and all votes should be by roll call. For remote directors, please raise your Zoom hand when you wish to speak. Also, during periods of public comment, if you have any public at your location, please raise your Zoom hand if your member of the public desires to speak. There are 2 very important items on tonight's agenda, only one of which is an action item. While Mr. Francis will give us an update on our progress on Tier 2, or Water Supply Agreement Amendment, we're almost there as a part of CEO reports. Our main action item is to fund a contract for workshops dealing with water efficiency use regulations. These regulations do and will require several potentially labor-intensive reports. Hopefully through education we can reduce the workload by still satisfying the state. Valley Water is picking up half the funding, so I hope we can approve our share tonight. I encourage all of our agencies to participate in the training when it starts in October. Also, Tom will be, our acting CEO Francis will be providing a Bay Delta update in part of open session. There's really no new progress on phase 1. No new action on the Tuolumne as the state's concentrating on phase 2, which is upper people. So anyhow, we're planning on canceling closed session number 2, unless there's an objection. Okay, Now on with the show, as BPC did not meet in August, our next item of business is the SFPUC report by Steve Ritchie. So, Steve, do you want to do your thing? Or Allison? Okay, great.
So Allison Castema, the BAWSCA liaison, I'm going to do the water supply update, and then Steve will come in and do the second part of the presentation on wildfire mitigation for all of the PUC. So first and foremost, we're in pretty good condition here in September. We're reaching the end of the water year. We have had the tiniest amount of rain here. We've seen a little precipitation in San Francisco in September. You'll see that a little bit a couple slides later. But storage-wise, good condition. Typically, we're at 83.6% at Hetchy. We're at 81.6 now. The system itself, total system storage, 89.3% against a usual 82%. So again, we're looking good. This is storage we've had in place from some good snowpack and wet years. Across the state, we're also seeing the state look pretty good. Similarly, everything is at historic average or above. A little bit, Pine Flats a little bit below it, but pretty much we're seeing that across the state, pretty reasonable conditions. The drought monitor here, we do see this typically start to increase here in the drier parts of the year, but nothing concerning for us on the water system side. So precipitation, if you can tell, there's the tiniest little change in August, but mainly it's been pretty flat in terms of total precipitation up at Hetchy. As mentioned, the upcountry, we're at 29.11 inches against a median of 30.92. So very close in the 90 percentiles. I didn't look at the exact number, but within the 95% I would go. And then in the Bay Area, the 7-station index here, we're at 22.8 inches against 23.35. So again, similarly, looking very good. And as mentioned, that 0.14 in September, so we're seeing a little bit of a very tiny amount, including perhaps today. And then total demand on the system, 226 deliveries. So again, we're following that usual bump up in the summer when we're seeing outdoor irrigation, so our higher point in the year. And that is pretty much almost, I think it is on top of the 5-year average. So very much what we were expecting to see. And I think that is about it for my slides. Happy to answer any questions, but I'm going to bring Steve up, and he's going to talk about wildfire management.
Director Andrews?
Forgive me if you mentioned this before. I just want to know if we participate in an advanced quantitative precipitation information project.
Yeah, AQPI. We actually have
Okay.
participated as part of integrated regional water management. That's part of the regional effort. We ourselves have actually invested funds in it to install sites. So we actually have a radar site that's being installed to assist with that effort, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Great. Steve?
Thanks, Allison. I'm going to talk about wildfire management, which is a very important topic for us throughout the system. So I will cover the whole system, but obviously of greatest interest here will be the Bay Area itself. We have 3 components to the system, or to our wildfire efforts. In the Hetchy system, it's all built around the state-required wildfire mitigation plan. These are now state-required plans for everybody who owns and operates, particularly transmission lines. Obviously we're much smaller than PG&E, but we have to do the same kind of plan that PG&E does for all of their transmission lines and distribution lines for electricity. And in the Bay Area, it's really built around managing the 62,000 acres of watershed lands that we have. So we do have some power lines there, but we're worried about a lot more than power lines, and I'll talk about that later. And then I'll briefly cover the city of San Francisco, which has an emergency firefighting water system, because many people have asked us, Could something like Pacific Palisades happen in San Francisco? And the answer is probably no, because we do have this particularly emergency firefighting water system. But first, talking about our system upcountry and beyond. This is a map, obviously the middle part of California, and it's where our overhead electrical lines exist in relation to the high fire threat districts. So when you look at this map, the gray area are not high fire threat districts. The yellow area are one level above that in being some degree of risk, and then the reddish areas are the ones that are at the highest level of fire risk. And you'll notice that there on the left-hand side of the picture, now that the Peninsula Watershed area is a high fire threat district within the context of what the state is calling fire threats. So we're really, very cognizant there of the importance of how we manage our system here. But the biggest deal here is the black line crossing the state, which are our high voltage lines, the transmission lines, and then there are smaller lines, the red lines there that are ones that are low, that are the distribution lines, the ones that run along utility poles. And we do have some of those in our local area here, but they're very short distances. So we have to basically have a plan for all of this, and that is something that we take very seriously as we move forward. One of the big accomplishments we did this year is we've got a lot more eyes on our lines. These blue dots there you see are areas where the state and others have installed basically cameras for visual observation of any sensing of fire that is underway. And so, the green area has got pretty good coverage just within it, and also at the extreme. So we're feeling very good about where we stand with relative to our transmission lines. In the Bay Area, managing our lands, we have a lot of things we do. First, we have obviously watershed keepers in both our Alameda and Peninsula watersheds. And these are really our eyes on the ground, the folks who respond at all times to all kinds of activities. But one of their big keys is to be on the lookout for fires. That is something that we have to deal with more than we would like, and I'll get to what the real risks are down below. One of the things that we do on our lines, this also applies up country, but here, when the risk is deemed too great because of temperature, humidity, and wind conditions, we actually close our watersheds to activity. Oftentimes we have consultants, contractors, different people doing stuff in the watershed. If there's a high fire risk, we close the watershed. Nobody gets access in because we don't want any stray sparks from any kinds of activities. And there, you'd be surprised how many different activities can create sparks. We also put our surveillance on high alert. Whenever we're closing the watersheds, basically everybody's on overtime and keeping an eye out for potential fires that might be coming up. We work very much in cooperation with CAL FIRE. They are the primary responder to fires. And we also work with local first responders. CAL FIRE is very clearly the lead agency. We make sure that is very clear for everybody working together. Got to know who's in charge, and CAL FIRE is in charge when it comes to fighting the fires. We actually provide eyes and ears on the ground. We're the people who can help direct them to where a fire is and the best way to get there in navigating our watersheds or the areas around our watersheds. So we work in very close communication, and one of the things we're actually quite proud of is we sponsor an annual first responders gathering in each watershed where CAL FIRE, the local emergency managers, the local first responders, sheriff's department, fire departments, and our staff all get together for 3 or 4 hours. Part of it is just a meet and greet lunch and making sure everybody knows who is the person they should be contacting, and what's their cell phone number, and all those kind of little details. And we also, every time we do those, we have a tabletop exercise to make sure that people are thinking about, okay, if this happened, what would we do? And those are very important activities to do. We also engage with CAL FIRE on a number of prescribed burns. We're actually increasing the number of those because I think most folks think those are definitely a very important tool to have. There have been examples, some unfortunate examples, where prescribed burns have gotten out of hand when they weren't done in a proper time and in a proper way. But we are very close to CAL FIRE on what they do and how we do it, and I'll show a photo of that a little bit later. The biggest risks and challenges for the PUC in our lands are, one, vegetation management. It all keeps growing. It's amazing what happens. Plants are there and they just grow. And so we have, excuse me, a number of, staff seasonally we hire to actually, help maintain vegetation and limit it. A lot of mowing of different grassland areas and taking out of dead and dying trees. Unfortunately, because of sudden oak death, for example, we did have a lot of dying trees, and this recent droughts have done that. So we actually currently, I believe, have 5 tree contracts that we actually use in our watersheds to help manage that load. Lightning strikes are a big deal. We just went through this period a few weeks ago where I believe the number that I heard out of the governor's office were that in the Central Valley and foothills there were 90,000 lightning strikes during that last bout. It was pretty striking on that. And we actually had personal experience of folks have gone up to Hetch Hetchy or beyond up to Yosemite going through the Chinese camp area. We were actually on our way up for a tour as this was happening. And in Chinese camp, you could see the fire developing. In fact, the Highway 120 was closed behind us, and I was just up there day before yesterday, and Chinese camp really got pretty heavily damaged from the fire, and it was just one of those lightning strikes. It was just, when lightning strikes, we had one period of time, a few years ago, where we had 17 fires from small fires from lightning strikes in our peninsula watershed just in one night. They were all contained, nothing went anywhere, but they happen really rapidly, and they take a lot of response to take care of. Frankly, they're a bigger risk for us than the power lines are. But the power lines are definitely part of it, so we work within the wildfire mitigation plan that we file with the state on that. I thought I'd throw in this photo here. This is actually, it looks like a fire, and it is a fire, but this was a prescribed burn we did with CAL FIRE in the peninsula watershed. We've actually been doing prescribed burns, particularly on the face of a couple of our dams, San Andreas and Pilarcitos dams, over the years, and we're probably going to be expanding the number of prescribed burns we do in the peninsula watershed. And last but not least, talk about City of San Francisco. We have an emergency firefighting water system there. It was developed after the 1906 earthquake and fire. Excuse me. Actually, just because I recently read a book on it. The earthquake itself lasted for a minute. The fires lasted for like 3 or 4 days afterwards, so there was much more devastation from the fires than the earthquake itself. But one of the things that came out of that was developing something that was originally called the auxiliary water supply system. So that, together with the existing hydrant system attached to the potable system, are really our emergency firefighting water system. But the auxiliary system is separate from the potable system. It's built to deliver high volumes of water at higher pressures. It's driven by one open reservoir. As you can see down there, there's a label on Twin Peaks Reservoir. So right next to Sutro Tower, there's an open reservoir that we use drinking water to support those, and 2 large tanks in the system. And then we also supplement them with 2 bay water pump stations, so we can pump in water from the bay. And all of this system, this is displayed on the map here. All those red dots are fire hydrants on the emergency system. The blue dots are actually a separate piece that we have called cisterns, which are tanks that are underground just waiting to be used in a fire protection situation. So San Francisco itself, as an urban area, has a pretty good level of protection here, and we're always looking at expanding this. But it costs a lot of money to have one of these, so believe me. So I wouldn't run back to your city and said, let's put in a duplicate system to fight fires. Cost effective might not be the right thing to do, but back in 1906 and just thereafter, it was concluded, let's do this. And so San Francisco has done this, and it's a good system to have. But overall, again, the real message here is we worry about fires everywhere in our system, in the urban area, in the Bay areas, in the close to urban areas, and all the way up through Hetch Hetchy. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about any and all of these.
Okay, Director Andrews.
Thank you for your presentation. I wanted to know if we're tapping into any Prop 4 funds in relation to fire safety and resilience.
Excuse me. I don't know if there's anything in Prop 4 that is going to become available that we might pursue. We were just talking about that today, because I know that in the budget process, they needed to find a way to break loose some of those funds. So I'm not sure where we're going to be on that.
I'm hearing the applications are more favorable if there's a regional application, so might be something that we can look into.
We will definitely pay close attention to that.
Okay, thanks.
Director Snyder.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation on the fire stuff. Couple of questions. Slide 16, I think I heard you say that all those little boxes are cameras? Or was that all activity?
Yeah, cameras.
Cameras. Is it possible to get both this presentation and maybe a bigger, more detailed blow-up of what I'm assuming is the Peninsula watershed?
Actually, what we can do is this presentation, you can have, you've already got it, I think, hopefully as part of your package. But, excuse me, we will also send a link to our wildfire mitigation plan. That's produced, covers the entire system, and so it will talk about the local watersheds as well. It's focused, the wildfire mitigation plan is focused on everything related to the risk from power lines. So many of these things are included in there. The actual, what are people doing on the ground in terms of, responding to fires and working with CAL FIRE, that kind of stuff is less so in there. But the structural things and, excuse me, most importantly, how we respond in terms of what is our version of public safety power shutoffs is a very key element throughout the system. We do that probably, 3 times a year. We just turn off our power lines.
Thank you. That would be great. I have spent 9 years on San Mateo County's Emergency Services Council. Now I can just listen in, but given that, and Tom's not here for San Bruno, given that both of our cities were just added to the high fire risk right along 280, it's not just SFPUC, it's also Caltran and that, and we think there's a camera on Sweeney Ridge, but really have no idea where the other ones are. And then I know this is water, but I'm going to give you one thing that happens because San Mateo County just can't seem to stick to one alert system, and less than 10% of our residents, Woodside is the best because they've had a serious fire, but very few, relatively speaking, residents are on the alert system. You guys have done a couple of prescribed burns over the last couple of years. A couple were delayed due to wind, yay, on that. But sometimes, even though what I think of as Millbrae, Burlingame is alerted and Millbrae is not. I think it would be really cool if all 3 of our cities were alerted, because sometimes these fires now generate their own winds. And obviously, I think the one that I'm talking about was the San Andreas Dam prescribed burn, which was a couple of years ago. It just would be nice to know about them, because I always hear about it secondhand, and as a former elected, that makes me really nervous. So I think the current electeds would like to know if it's happening, if it's postponed, why, that's great. We do get easterlies too on that. So our big fires that almost caused evacuation were actually down on SFO land, not on SFPUC land. So just knowing can really help us, because the city's going to really have to work. I've gotten I wouldn't get the complaints anymore. But we're going to have residents getting their fire insurance dropped. So we need to start working proactively on this. So thank you for the study.
I did just want to add that our iInfo system, which is our alert system, we did specifically add contacts related to fires so that when we do prescribe burns, we issue out alerts on the status of those so that, again, since we coordinate certainly with CAL FIRE and others, they get that information because they're coordinating that planned burn, but we did specifically add much of those connected directly to the watersheds into that alert system, so we can double check through BAWSCA about status of those, but certainly the agencies should be receiving that so that you have that information.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other question from board members? Okay, seeing none, any questions from the public, including the public at our remote locations? And raise your
Tom,
hand.
I have my hands up.
Okay.
Okay.
Director Vella.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Chambers, and thank you, Steve, for the presentation. A couple of quick questions. One, Steve, I heard you say that CAL FIRE is in charge. Are you aware of any mutual aid or automatic aid agreements that they have as your system traverse, this terrain, especially on the peninsula? And question number two, are you aware of any early detection systems that you may have in place?
Okay, well, I'll answer the first. I don't know if we actually have an official mutual aid agreement with CAL FIRE. I just do know that they are the agency responsible for fighting fires. They are the lead agency in any event for a firefight. They are also the lead agencies for the environmental documents, for example, for the prescribed burns. So there is no question at all that CAL FIRE is responsible and that we all work with them.
Yeah, if I may, the reason I ask is because in many areas of your transmission mains and all that, the first responders or the closest to response may be a local jurisdiction, not CAL FIRE. So that's why I was curious if there was those agreements.
Well, that's why we do have the when we call the first responders, get-togethers. Those are the local first responders as well as it's not just CAL FIRE. It also includes the local agencies, San Mateo County and others who are there. So we take that responsibility seriously in working with the local agencies as well.
Okay.
On the second question, I'm not aware of any particular type of the sensing thing. I know different people have been out there marketing different types of sensors over time. We have been working in particular, it's detailed in the wildfire mitigation plan on an analysis system that pulls in all the different sensors that are publicly available. And that should be well laid out in that report. So again, we'll send that link along to you.
Good. Yeah, something to think about because these fires, they grow as big as or as quickly you can jump on them in the initial stages. So something to think about.
Oh yeah, no, we the personal experience we had just at the Chinese campfire. As we got through, everybody said, "Oh yeah, don't worry, it's going to be, it's starting to die out." 10 minutes later, the highway was being closed, and
Oh yeah,
it was just that way.
exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from board members or the public? Okay, hearing none, thank you very much, SFPUC. Next item is consent calendar. What I'd like to have is a motion a second, then we'll have comments, and then a vote. So does anybody want anything pulled from the consent calendar, Director Bro?
No, sir, I'll give you a motion to accept the consent calendar submitted.
Okay, it's been moved.
Second.
Seconded by Director Pierce. Any questions or comments? from board members? Any questions or comments from the public? Oh, look at my computer. Seeing none, we need a roll call.
Director Andrews,
Aye.
Director Bro,
Yes for Brisbane and GVMID.
Director Chambers,
Aye.
Director Cohen, Director Duncan,
Aye.
Director Hamilton, Director Hardy,
Yes.
Director Jordan,
Yes.
Director Kiesel,
Aye.
Director Lincoln,
Yes.
Director Manalo, Director Mellinger, Director Mickelson, Director Montano,
Yes.
Director Nash,
Yes.
Director Piccolotti, Director Pierce,
Yes.
Director Ragsdale,
Yes.
Director Schneider,
Yes.
Director Showalter,
Yes.
Director Stevenson, Director Stone,
Yes.
Director Vella,
Yes.
Director Weed, Director Ziegderman.
Aye.
The matter passes.
Okay, thank you. The next item is public comments on items not on the agenda. Any public either here or at remote locations that people like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the action calendar. The first action calendar item has to do with water use efficiency legislation workshops, and Tom Francis will be doing the presentation.
Good evening. This matter is going to request that the board authorize the negotiation and execution of a consultant contract to develop water use efficiency legislation workshops. Just briefly, there's 12 workshops that BAWSCA, in partnership with Valley Water, would hold between the months of October through June of the following year or next year. They'll be focusing on critical new water use efficiency regulations, specifically urban water use objectives that are being promulgated by the State Water Resources Control Board, commercial, industrial, and institutional, or CII, performance measures, statewide and local bans on irrigating non-functional turf with potable water, and also some other annual reporting requirements. And all of those are associated with the Making Water Conservation a California Way of Life legislation that passed several years ago when we had a drought through 2014 through 17. So the primary objectives of these workshops is to provide participating agencies with comprehensive information about these new regulations, presentations and valuable lessons that are going to be provided from other agencies, not necessarily our regional agencies, but perhaps Southern California and elsewhere, that have already begun implementing these regulations. Direct access to subject matter experts on the various topics that would be covered in the workshops that are being proposed. Direct access to subject matter experts that will be brought in on topics such as, for example, non-functional turf. I'm sorry about that. And also, finally, just a collaborative forum. These workshops have proven very successful in the past when we've held them on a number of different topics. And the forum that they create is something that we find really valuable. Our member agencies and their representatives do as well. The workshop consultant will be hired, and they're going to hold some pretty key responsibilities. They're going to be responsible for developing the schedule of the workshops, when they're going to be held. They're going to identify the topics. For example, this year, by December 30th, there's a bunch of reporting that's due from each of your member agencies. So I suspect some of the topics that are going to take place in November and December are going to help each agency deal with those reporting requirements. But there's other topics that will clearly need to be covered, and it will be the consultant's responsibility to find who's going to speak on what and when and schedule them out. Agenda development, subject matter experts, as I mentioned before, getting all that information together is the responsibility of the consultant that we're hiring. There's going to be workshop notes, follow-up that's needed, logistics, where are we going to hold these workshops? Some of them will be in person. The bulk of them will be through Zoom or remote, but definitely we need to have some in-person workshops. Also preparing a final report. That's a big responsibility of the consultant. The procurement process followed a normal route. We had a request for qualifications, and we sent that to 19 firms. So we really tried to be broad to get a good response. We also put it on our website. This is a partnership effort with Valley Water, so I'll talk about that in a second, but we included them in the review. We got 4 responses, which was a pretty good number in my opinion. So we had Valley Water staff, BAWSCA staff. We also had representatives from our agencies as well as from Valley Water agencies take part in the review of the actual written submittals, the statement of qualifications. We narrowed it down to 3, so 3 firms were selected for an actual interview that we conducted through Zoom, and our agency as well as Valley Water took part in that consultant interview. It was held on September 5th, and the recommendation that we're bringing forward tonight is that a firm called Water Systems Consulting be the entity that we contracted with, or that we contract with. That's the recommendation. WSC was hired due to a combination of things. They were highly capable. They exhibited that both in their written submittals as well as in their interviews. They knew what was required as part of the work. They were very enthusiastic. We particularly enjoyed meeting with the person who'd be the project manager who brought a lot of energy into the room as we were interviewing her. They had great billing rates. It's important that we make sure that we hire somebody who's cost effective, and we believe we've been able to capture that with the selection of WSC. And then we performed reference checks. It's really important to call the other agencies that have used a consultant and press them on, okay, what's the best thing about working with them or this key person, and what are the pitfalls, what should we watch out for? Great reference checks for WSC. One of the really important things about this particular project that I wanted to share with the board is that it's a cost that's not just going to be covered by BAWSCA alone. We are working really well with Valley Water on their conservation efforts that are mutually of interest to BAWSCA. This is an example where we're getting sort of both of us as entities, Valley Water and BAWSCA, are getting our most bang for the buck. We're having a workshop that would cost normally $160,000 to put on, but since I'm having a room that's going to include Valley Water retail agencies, I'm covering that cost by $80,000 of BAWSCA money instead of $160,000. So it's a good deal. From the negotiations with WSC, we're working on finalizing the scope. I've actually been in conversations with them this week to do so. We are finalizing the cost. I am keeping it at below $160,000, so I'm not allowing it to go over that, and I've been successful in those negotiations to date to get that agreement. And so the question that you might also have as board members are, where are you going to pay for that? Where is this money coming from? We included $80,000 as part of the fiscal year budget that you as board members adopted in May, and so the cost has already been budgeted for. So we've covered, in our view, that particular requirement. So that brings me to my recommendation for the board to consider tonight, and I'll read it, that the board authorize the CEO, general manager to negotiate and execute a contract between BAWSCA and Water Systems Consulting, Inc., subject to legal counsel's final review, for a not-to-exceed amount of $160,000 to support BAWSCA's water use efficiency regulation workshop efforts. So I'll close that discussion and take any questions.
Okay, Director Hardy.
Thank you. I'm really excited about this, by the way, and I truly appreciate that you're working with Valley Water so we can get bang for our buck. What I want to understand is, it sounds like this is for directors. Is it also for staff? Because we want to make staff aware if it is. These in-person, will they be during the day or in the evening? And because you're working with Valley Water, it sounds like it may be closer down in the South Bay. Do we know about how long each one of these segments will be? Will it be an hour meeting, a 2-hour meeting? Also, those, for anyone that has to miss anything, will they be available afterward, say on Zoom or YouTube or something? Is that available for viewing if someone's not available during the live time? Those are my questions.
Well, let me start with who the audience for these is. I should have clarified. This is for staff, not necessarily for electeds or directors, which doesn't mean that there may not be a workshop or two that we would invite a director to, but we have to be cautious of quorum type issues. Staff, specifically relative to the water conservation programs that these agencies run, and also for perhaps the larger agencies, there could be specific staff people assigned to reporting, like data reporting, because there's a lot of state reporting as part of this. So that's the consideration. In terms of how we are going to hold these or where we would hold them, the bulk of the meetings would be through virtual, and mainly because of just the physical distance between, let's say, an agency in the southern part of Santa Clara County that might be a Valley Water retailer, and one of the BAWSCA agencies up here in the northern part of San Mateo County. Now, there will be some in-person workshops, though. We believe that to get the engagement, we need to at least have several in-person workshops. Those are likely to be multiple hour long. The in-person ones I could imagine being maybe as long as 6 hours. It will be topic dependent. It is the responsibility of the consultant. We've specifically called for that in the proposal to identify the room, get all the reservations in place, deal with ordering the food if needed, the refreshments, and any other details associated with securing that. We held a similar workshop in October. That was held in Mountain View. It included both BAWSCA as well as Valley Water reps. We found that pretty convenient, but there could be other venues, maybe Sunnyvale, maybe Santa Clara, maybe even Valley Water facilities. It's unlikely in my mind that we would hold an in-person workshop up here in the northern part of San Mateo County. Unlikely that I would consider Alameda, strictly because of that distance to travel consideration. But most meetings that are virtual could be at least 2 hours long. It could be longer. So this is, believe it or not, this is a meaty enough topic that I could easily envision 12 meetings that had enough details to pass along where they would not be necessarily 1-hour meetings. So I believe I answered all the questions, but if I missed something, let me know.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay, Director Snyder. I'm sorry, I couldn't see it.
Thank you. Thank you. Question. What do you define, or what does the state define as non-functional turf?
Well, that's one of the reasons we were going to have a fairly lengthy workshop, is to get into the definition. But it's basic, and I might call on one of my staff persons to add to this, but it's turf that doesn't necessarily have, if my mind is right. Well, Danielle, instead of me jammering on, what is your definition of non-functional turf?
The state purposely did not define it.
Oh,
So
that's why I
part
couldn't define
part of the effort would be to coalesce on a definition, perhaps.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm bringing it up, because I've talked about it before, I think we're the only city within the BAWSCA region that has banned fake grass. Now, I couldn't drive for a couple of months. I've done a lot of walking, and for a city that banned fake grass 2 years ago, a lot of it is still getting installed. And then the school districts don't have to follow local ordinances at all. So every high school, San Mateo Unified, has put in fake grass, and over in the East Bay, they sadly put in fake football field, and then it burned. So But the warranties under fake grass actually have you watering the grass or you void your warranties. So I'm hoping that in the study that you include, I know we're one tiny little entity with a ban, we were hoping more entities would follow us, because the reason to ban fake grass, plastic grass is a huge, from how it kills beneficial insects to it's too hot and it causes injuries when you're playing on it. But know that. And then we're currently going through another park design right now where there used to be a robber baron pond. And I had been trying to get that turned into a cistern. But right now that grassy area is playable, but it's considered, and I don't have the right recreation term, it's non-use specific planning. So it's a big chunk of grass that you could do a pickup football game on or pickup volleyball, but it's not going to be a soccer field, let's put it that way. So those kinds of, hopefully you're going to look at those. We've also been experimenting in different areas, including slopes, on a 910 fescue that is considerably drought tolerant, but still adds something where it's got a gorgeous view, you can set a blanket up there and look at the entire Bay Area from this view. So, I mean, if this says you can't play on it, people are not necessarily running their dogs on it, but I have sat there and looked out over the view, sitting on the grass there, and it is our experiment, and it's showing to be much less water consuming and disease resistant, blah, blah, blah. So hopefully you're going to include all those kinds of examples on that.
Yeah, well, good hearing that from you tonight. One of the things that I didn't mention in terms of the support that the consultant's going to provide for us is also what we'll call office hours. So we're having these 12 workshops, and I know at least one, if not two, will be on non-functional turf. Perhaps not all of the questions would be answered during the workshop. The benefit of having an office hour, a 1 hour or 2 hour office hour, a couple of weeks set apart, is that, say, a representative from Milpitas, Millbrae, San Bruno could call during that 1 hour time. It will probably be virtual as well, and pose specific questions that may come up as a follow-up. And also, it'll be the responsibility of our consultant, if they can't answer a question, maybe there's a deeper level of non-functional turf expert that they want to come and get. They'll be required to do that. And then last but not least, if an entity, let's say, for example, Millbrae, has experience with non-functional turf that they want to share during this public setting, they will be asked to do so during one of the workshops. So what your community has developed would then be shared out also during this type of event. And it's not just, again, this is one example of a topic, but there'll be others that will be talked about. So.
And then the one last thing that would be really nice, if this workshop is also going to say what are the alternatives, we have, I think a lot of the older communities have parking strips that historically, they have city street trees in them, and then they've had grass. I have one, and I'm taking the grass out, but my next door neighbors run a daycare center, so all the kids are let on and off right in front of my house. So whatever I put in there has been trampled. So I need trample-proof plants to put in there. And I know that sounds really silly, but I'm 5 houses down from our main park. So every weekend, people are getting in and out and carrying picnic baskets out and stepping on my parking strip. So if this workshop included really good alternatives, that would be a win. Thank you.
Okay, Director Showalter, I believe your thing's up. I only see a blank white, but.
Yeah, thank you so much for this presentation. It was really interesting. I was wondering if you could just share a couple of examples of what the water efficiency regulations are regulating besides non-functional grass. And the reason I thought that is because in Mountain View, we kind of came up with a working definition, which I wasn't going to share because I sort of assumed everybody did. But since Director Schneider had this conversation, I'm just going to share real quickly what ours was. During the last drought, we had our parks people just observe where people use the grass in the parks. And the places they didn't, we declared non-functional grass for the purposes of the drought, and we kind of let that that grass, a lot of that grass just die. And some of it we've put back in as grass, and some of it we've changed into native plants. But it was, it was done by the Parks and Rec maintenance people who really were out there very, very regularly. So I didn't know there wasn't a real definition. But anyway, so you might want to talk to Elizabeth Flagel about that. She would have much more specifics than I did. But I would be interested in an example or two, or what are the water use efficiency regulations regulating?
Well, I'll talk about one that I think is a big challenge for all of your agencies. And then maybe I'll ask Danielle to add any flavor to this, because she's definitely helped me on this particular project. So you all, or many of you, have CII customers. There's several of you that maybe are, I almost say, fortunate that your only type of water customer is a retail customer, or excuse me, is a homeowner. But if you have retail customers, you're going to be required to divide those up into 20 categories of CII customers. They may not match your billing category. The state doesn't care about that. You are going to have to take your CII customers and divide it into that. And then for those customers, you will have to find out who are your 20% biggest water users. And then you'll start having to report as to how you've been successful in implementing best management practices of different types of BMPs for each of those customer types, and especially the large water users within those types, and the success or failure to get those BMPs implemented by those customer types. For example, a hotel. What is their BMP that they're following for their parking lot? What is the BMP that they're following for maybe internal water use at those hotels? You can imagine it is a lot of effort, because some of our larger BAWSCA member agencies have several different types of CII. And the reporting is every year you're going to report, and hopefully over time, if the state is successful, go from, okay, 20% of our BMPs have implemented, and now it's 30% of our customers, all the way up to 100% over time. So that's just an idea of the CII efforts and the BMPs on that. And Danielle, I might turn to you if you have another example that you want to share, and maybe I didn't quite explain that right, but I know that the CII effort is pretty extreme.
The other major part of the regulations is setting budgets for efficient water use for certain customer categories. So they have indoor efficient residential use, outdoor efficient residential use, commercial, industrial, institutional, outdoor, and water loss. This doesn't regulate the use by customers, but as the agency, you have to get your water use within the aggregate budget. And so if you're above it, you'd implement certain conservation programs depending on where you're exceeding.
So,
well, thank you for sharing that with me, and I can understand why you're going to need a lot of workshops, because this is very technical. And I think that, getting all of the agencies together, it will function as a technical advisory committee, and people will be able to, share best practices and experience, and that should be very valuable. So thank you very much.
yeah, thank you.
Okay, Director Weed.
Yes, thank you. I've attended a number of sessions at conferences, but to date, each of those conferences was solely restricted to how to do the reporting requirements for an incredibly complex reporting system. Not policy, not best management practices, but really what has to be reported, and in what quantities, and in what format, rather than as a policy issue. So I suspect, I wouldn't be surprised if this session is somewhat, and series of conferences are restricted in your discussions to what has to be reported.
I believe that there will also, hopefully, Director Weed, there's going to be some information sharing from those agencies that have maybe gotten ahead of others. what's effective and what's worked. But I don't deny that, similar to other things the state of California is requiring of us as water agencies, they want reporting, whether it's about this water use efficiency or other topics. We are finding ourselves as water agencies spending more and more time submitting data to the state. So I do agree with that.
And just one example was a requirement to estimate how much water was being used to irrigate edible vegetation. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from board members? Okay, seeing none, I think next we'll have a motion and a second, and then seek any other comments.
Chair Chambers, I'd be happy to make the motion
Okay, thank you.
to approve the consultant hiring as indicated by the staff recommendation.
Second was Director Cohen, thank you. Okay, any further questions from the board? Any questions from the public or comments? Okay, roll call?
Director Andrews.
Aye.
Director Bro.
Yes for Brisbane and GVMID.
Director Chambers.
Aye.
Director Cohen. Director Duncan. Director Hardy.
Yes.
Director Jordan.
Yes.
Director Kiesel.
Aye.
Director Lincoln.
Yes.
Director Mickelson. Director Montano.
Yes.
Director Nash.
Yes.
Director Piccolotti. Director Pierce. Director Ragsdale.
Yes.
Director Snyder.
Yes.
Director Showalter.
Yes.
Director Stone.
Yes.
Director Vella.
Yes.
Director Weed. Director Zichterman.
Yes.
It passes.
Okay, thank you. Oops. Okay, thank you. Our next item on the agenda are CEO reports, which Mr. Francis will give those.
Yeah, I've got some good news relative to Tier 2 and the WSA amendment. As all of you are aware, we have 26 member agencies total in BAWSCA. 24 agencies have adopted this WSA amendment package and approved the new Tier 2 plan, which equates to about 87% of water purchases. There's a couple more agencies left. I know that one of them is bringing it forward in early October, and we've had successful conversations with the other agency. They're bringing this to committee in October, I believe, as well. And so it is my hope, so to speak, that by the latter part of October, this will be a very successful completed effort. And I do want to acknowledge Danielle McPherson as well as Allison Schutte. They've been really vital in helping these get adopted and in providing information to agency staff, as well as GM Smagel. I know he's not here tonight, but to be quite frank with you, he was pretty instrumental in meeting with electeds as well as being present. Certainly that's been extremely successful and hopefully a total success, which we'll find out by the end of October. Really quickly, as Chair Chambers had mentioned, in terms of the FERC effort in Phase 1, there really isn't too much to update as compared to when we came to you 2 months ago with regard to the FERC effort. Just real quickly, MID and TID have withdrawn what's called a water quality certification application that originally was submitted to the state board as part of the FERC licensing effort for Don Pedro and LaGrange. It was, the application was withdrawn. I think that, frankly speaking, there's no cloak and mirrors about that. It'll be put back in place next year, so nothing too urgent to share with you on that. The reasoning is simply that the districts want to make sure they align with whatever the CEQA and Clean Water Act efforts are that will be adopted by the state board next year. So it's just made more sense just to hold off for a year. And they've indicated that there'll be a new request that will be filed with the state board within the next several months. So once that happens, we'll come back to you folks as part of the next board meeting or the subsequent one and provide a bit more, flesh out some more details on that. But it's not, from our perspective right now, this isn't necessarily news. It's just standard procedures happening. With the Bay Delta plan, in terms of that update, we continue to track what's going on at the state board. San Francisco PUC does as well, and they do a great job of keeping us engaged on that. Phase 2 of the Bay Delta plan, the state board originally was going to have some public hearings next week, but instead, for various reasons, they did a sort of a change of path that they're proposing. They're going to recirculate what's called a draft staff report and also produce a substitute environmental document, again, for Phase 2. Phase 2, just as a reminder, those are the parties that get water from the Sacramento portion of the San Joaquin, Sacramento Bay Delta. So they're what I think of as sort of the northern upper California part around Sacramento. So Phase 2 will then be released, that draft report, and the what I call the SED, Supplement Environmental Document, will be released in December of this year. So it's, again, going through that CEQA process that they now have to follow. If that takes place according to as they have scheduled, then we'll likely learn when hearings are going to be held relative to this Phase 2. So instead of next week, it's probably going to be 6 months from now that they have the hearings, because they're following a more formal CEQA process as part of the Sacramento part of the basin. With our work on Phase 1, which I would call the Tuolumne Healthy River and Landscape process, that's still moving along, and there's a scientific basis report that we continue to expect will be released. Don't have an exact date of when that might happen, but that's still moving forward at the state level. So when it is released, we will alert the board as to that, and our efforts at BAWSCA, as well as our friends at the SFPUC, will be to review that and to come back and give you our opinion about whether it continues to prove to be favorable for our needs as water agencies. So that's my Bay Delta plan update. That kind of ends my discussion of what was in the CEO letter, Chair Chambers, and I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, any comments on this?
Just a quick comment, if I might.
Dr. Stone.
My understanding is the Bay Delta plan is for plan deadline is 2035. It's a 9-year plan that allows them to ignore the issues of sea level rise. So for what it's worth and for whatever effort we're putting into it, but it's only 9 years, is what I was told. Thank you.
Dr. Stone. Dr. Stone, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Tom, for the report and filling in. Also appreciate you having the same first name as our CEO. This makes this so easy. Just a couple questions. So on the 2025 demand study update, I know the letter mentioned that the 2025 demand looks to come in below the 2022 demand studies projections. So as the projections were a summation of each agency's projections, are we able to get a report that shows by agency how far off the 2025 projections were to the 2024 actuals? Because I know we don't have the 2025 actuals yet, so kind of thinking that could be a proxy at least for us to have that information.
Well, what I'll say regarding the demand study is that probably by the next week or two, we're going to have some final numbers from our agencies. Each agency is being asked to do a final review of what we've come up with. And so the plan was with the meetings coming up with the board policy committee as well as the board in November, to start sharing the results with each of our board members. Let me discuss with our CEO as well as our attorney in terms of providing agency-specific information. I know our demand study will. I'm just not necessarily sure about the other things that you want, whether we've actually calculated how demand estimates from our prior study for 2024 compared to what our actual demands were. I don't think I've done that yet, or we've done that yet. But we can certainly provide the results of the report and the work, and to show what each agency's demand estimates are for 2025 and moving forward. That's something that we're likely going to be sharing.
Great, yeah, I think that information will be really helpful, especially as our agencies continue to work on urban water management plans. The further we get along in that, I mean, I don't think we want to get too far in there and then get that information a little too late. So that would be really helpful. And then just a point, want to appreciate kind of staff and also our CEO as well, coming to Palo Alto City Council last month to help secure the WSA amendment. Also would just like to clarify for members of this board that Palo Alto was never objecting to the amendment. In fact, it passed 7-0. Definitely wanted to help out our neighbors in Mountain View and others. But the issue was with our Utility Advisories Commission, who split on the recommendation to the council, but their concern was also not the actual amendment. They also agreed that Palo Alto wanted to be good neighbors for Mountain View, but their concern was related to the SFPUC refusing to provide data on the design drought risk, despite Palo Alto's request for that information. That was a concern that I also continue to share with our Utilities Advisory Committee, and it seems like many other council members as well also share that concern. So I just think I think all of our member agencies will really benefit collectively if we request that the SFPUC provide that data on the design drought risk. No, we're not having that conversation tonight, but just to kind of put that out there again. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Nash, please.
Thank you. So in the Strategy 2050 update, there was a discussion about, or there's, the affordability was discussed, and I know we're going to get a bigger update in November, but is it possible to just get an overview of what those discussions were like?
Sure, I'll give a quick summary verbally, but I do understand that you as board members would like to get updates maybe before the discussion that might take place at a board meeting. We have these planning meeting discussions, so we are taking that to heart as staff as well, to give you something a couple weeks in advance. So from an affordability perspective, BAWSCA staff, along with our consultants, are looking at coming up with estimates for the BAWSCA region. So we have done work specifically at a zip code level as well as within your respective service areas to see whether our water rates that are existing and proposed into the future based on what we can estimate they might be for the strategy will be seen as affordable. So just from a perspective of compared to what, if you will, what income levels are in those zip codes, or income levels are within your member agency, as well as regionally for BAWSCA. Are we having a situation where the water is affordable for our residents, so to speak, our customers? We are finding that, at least where the study is right now, we have affordable water for our residents, not just at a agency perspective, but also at a regional perspective. We need to do some more work, though. I mean, I want to give you folks something a little more robust than me just sitting up here and saying, hey, we have an affordable water supply, and hey, our thoughts are in the future we're going to continue as well. I need to produce a report that you can review. We're also working with San Francisco and their finance staff that met with you a couple of months ago so that we can see, okay, well, here's how we've been doing it with our consultants' help. And we're going to try to do a little deeper dive with their finance staff to see what is the same about the methods that we used and maybe what's different. So there's some work to do. One of the things that we've done, and no offense to our consultant, we took this on as staff. We wanted to also look at not just water rates, but what we estimate we're going to be paying for water in the future, how does that compare to what we as our residents have to pay for housing or for gas, fuel, PG&E bills? What do we pay for other, what I would call common household bills? And so we're going to present that information to you as well. So it's not just sort of here's the if you will, the cookbook method of figuring out whether you have an affordable water supply. But let's take a step back and think about it. Well, what would you as a resident think you should be paying for your water? Should it be 1% of all your monthly bills? If so, maybe that's a good thing. Or is it 10% of all your monthly bills? That probably isn't a good thing. So that's the type of thing that we're trying to share with you. And maybe I'm being unfair to Nagin. I might be pulling off the covers sooner than she had hoped. But I find these discussions as a staff person sitting in, and I do give Nagin a lot of credit. She's leading that. I find it really interesting, and I think you folks will as well. And we are going to be, it won't be a Band-Aid, but I will be pulling off that Band-Aid for all of you to read, and we're going to give you some materials well in advance so that you're prepared to come with questions and hopefully some enthusiasm about the topic. So, does that help?
It does very much. Something that I'll be interested in is how you said you were breaking them down by zip codes. Certainly within Menlo Park, we have a tremendous amount of economic diversity, and so we actually go down to census tracts.
Well, I should have probably said that. I think it is census tract. Now, I want to give a caution on this because, frankly speaking, I could say, Director Nash, I'm going to share and make public what's happening in your city by census tract. We have to be sensitive to what information we produce. I want to give folks information, but BAWSCA is a regional entity, and so we'll probably show a lot of stuff from a regional perspective, and some of the, if we do develop census stuff, and I haven't necessarily said I have that ready to share with you, I need to just be cautious about it. And I'll just leave it at that.
Very much so. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from board members? Okay, seeing none, any questions from public? Seeing none. Thank you, Thomas. Okay, our next item is closed session number 1 concerning the CEO's performance evaluation. This will be a short one. Any comments from the public before we start? Okay, I'd like to recess for maybe 5 minutes to empty out the room. Okay, and hopefully the feedback problem's fixed. Okay, next slide should be, is yours on? That's what the problem is. Okay, can we have the compensation slide next? Oh, actually, in closed session. Do you want me to say it?
Okay. Closed session ended at 7:56 PM, and no action was taken, but the board found that Mr. Smeagol's performance has been outstanding since he assumed the duties of the CEO in December.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our next item is item number 9, information report of CEO compensation. We have a slide on that. Okay. We need to cover CEO compensation in open session, although it is being set by our current CEO's current contract. By contract, total compensation is being increased by 3% over last year. Our intent was to provide a baseline adjustment with further adjustments to be made by using salary surveys in future years. You know, with our last CEO, we had a problem that we got way out of whack on payment, and so we did a survey, and it took us a while. We had a really big increase. So what we did when we structured this contract, we have a baseline, and then either party can request a salary survey, and we'll reset the compensation in accordance with that survey. And that's salary surveys may be requested in the second, third, or fourth year of the agreement. For the record, in accordance with the employment agreement, which specifies a 3% increase in total compensation as of September 30th, Mr. Smeagol's new base salary will be $315,962. He will also be paid the maximum allowable deferred compensation plan contribution in accordance with PEPRA and IRS limits. In 2025, this was $27,268. He will continue to receive the annual car allowance of $7,800. Mr. Smeagol's total compensation will be $351,030. Okay, any questions on this? Any comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, our next item is closed session number 2, which we have decided to cancel, so we don't need to do that. Any additional comments from the public? Seeing none, no hands over there. Director's discussion, comments, questions, and agenda requests. Seeing none, date and time and location of future meeting. Next slide. First slides. November 20th, 6:30, here. Without objection, I adjourn the meeting until November 20th at 6:30 here. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.